FBI, apart from doing house raid and watching you from the web camera, had helped China build their missile at the height of the Cold War. Thanks to the FBI, this Chinese man, who was a founding member of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the engineer in U.S. Army's first missile program, left U.S. to build missile for China and become what we call in China the father of Dongfeng missile and the Chinese space program. The year is 1955 at the seaport of Los Angeles. Before boarding a ship back to China, this man told the reporter, "I do not plan to come back. I plan to do my best to help the Chinese people build up the nation." His name is Qian Xuesen, an unheard name in the West, but a national hero in China. Just a few years earlier, he was working with U.S. Army and married the daughter of a high-ranking nationalist China general. What made him go to the communist China? We need to go back to 1911. Qian was born a month after the collapse of the Qing dynasty. He had been a smart kid from a young age. Graduated top of the class at primary school, high school, and university. In 1935, he went to study at the MIT on the Boxer Indemnity Scholarship, and later transferred to the California Institute of Technology. There, he met his mentor, Theodore von Karman, who described Qian as a slightly short young man with a serious look, who answered my questions with unusual precision. At Caltech, he studied aerodynamics and rocket propulsion, received his PhD in 1939. While he was working as a research assistant at Caltech, World War II was raging in Europe and Asia. In 1943, British intelligence found that Germany was building and testing long-range missiles, the V-1 and the V-2. In response, U.S. Army funded Caltech to research the same thing. Under the directorship of von Karman, Qian and several other students founded the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. In 1945, he was hired by the U.S. Army as a consultant and traveled to post-war Germany to investigate German rocket technology. Dressed as a U.S. Army colonel, he interviewed captured German scientists such as Wernher von Braun, the father of the V-2, and who later led the Apollo moon landing. He also visited German research facilities and laboratories. To his surprise, he found that German scientists were testing his aerodynamic theory with their supersonic wind tunnel. After the war, he got married and worked his way to become the youngest professor at Caltech. He was in his prime years, had a decent job and a loving family, and he expected a great life in the United States. The American dream come true. However, at the same time, China was fighting a bloody civil war, and the communist side won in 1949. Quickly, the Chinese came to be seen in the US as the evil commies, no longer an ally. FBI began to question him, suspect him of being a commie because he was at the same party with a known Communist Party member. But it was a social party, not the political party. Nevertheless, FBI arrested him in 1950 and took away his security clearance. Just imagine, you are a leading scientist working with top-secret army project, and one day the FBI show up and take you away because you were at a friend's party. Out of anger with the accusation and the fact that his ill father was still in China, Qian thought, screw it, I am going home.
So long, suckers!
In April 1951, Qian was declared a threat to national security by the court, awaiting the decision to deport him. During this time, he was put under house arrest, so he could only teach math and work with non-sensitive research at Caltech, while occasionally harassed by FBI agents, like being followed around, had his phone tapped. Finally, in 1955, after 4 years of house arrest, the US government thought the rocket technology Qian researched in 1950 was outdated, so Qian was allowed to leave for China, in exchange for 11 American pilots captured in the Korean War. When he arrived in China, Qian received a hero's welcome and began to build the China missile program from scratch. He negotiated with the Soviets when they export rocket technology to China, supervised the design and testing of Dongfeng ballistic missile, which also serves as the base for the Long March rockets used in the space program. Most importantly, he trained generations of scientists and engineers who later built the entire PLA rocket army arsenal. Years later, Dan Kimball, the 51st Secretary of the Navy, said, "It was the stupidest thing this country ever did. He was no more a communist than I was, and we forced him to go." FBI jokes aside, the irony is that the US made China their biggest competitor by its own hand. While it's true that in the late 1940s, there were many cases that scientists who was communist believer or sympathizer doing spy work for the Soviet Union, so there was ground for suspicion that Qian, a Chinese citizen, could be a spy, as China just became a communist country in 1949. But in Qian's case, there was never evidence to show that he was a spy. It was the McCarthy-era anti-communism witch hunt that drove him away. According to Qian's son, his father was still mad at the US government for his mistreatment, refusing to visit US or speak to any Westerners for the rest of his life. So here's the story about Qian Xuesen, and how did the FBI give China a talented rocket scientist? Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comment section.